Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim.
Yo.
We're here. We are a horror movie podcast. We get together every week, we talk about a horror film that we've watched. It's really that simple. We are kicking off Werewolf Month with Late Phases, a movie that I actually just saw for the first time last year. This was one that I tried to get in because we knew we were doing like a best of the decade at the end of the year. When I say last year, because by the time this goes up, it's actually longer than that, because this is not going up to March, April. This is April 2021 now. We're recording this in the past, time travel, but so yeah, I think around September, October 2019 is when I watched this for the first time, and we're geared up for Werewolf Month. Put some different big movies on there that we hadn't done yet, and but one of the smaller ones that I thought was worth doing was this. So Late Phases, also known as Night of the Wolf, and also I think known as Late Phases Lone Wolf for the Night. So there's a few different titles for some reason, but Late Phases is the core real title. So this is something we'll start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. The basic premise of Late Phases is that an older man, a vet, who is blind, joins a retirement sort of community, a gated retirement community, and there's a werewolf attack, and he basically has a month to prepare for the next time this happens. He's smart enough to kind of like figure out what's happened, and he spends a month preparing, getting weapons, planning, and ultimately making sort of peace with the fact that he's probably going into a bit of a suicide mission to try and take on a werewolf and go down swinging. So it's a movie. Obviously, the title is a bit of a double meaning because it's about the latter part of his life and looking back at his mistakes and that kind of thing, and what's he going to do on his way out. And obviously, Late Phases also tying in with the moon and the wolf and all the rest of it. So that's the basic gist of the film. Well, I asked Tim first of all. You had seen this before, right? This wasn't a first watch.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because this came out in 2014, I believe.
That's right.
So what's weird is I forget if I saw it last year or the year before, but and I guess last year, I mean 2019. I forget if it was then or 2018, but like this is one of those ones where I had no clue this existed, and then I feel like in the last like I never heard anyone recommending like 2014, 15, 16.
Yeah.
But for some reason in like the last 1 or 2 years, I feel like a lot of people bring this up when you're talking about werewolf movies. Like people are like, oh, you know what is pretty good is this one, Late Phases. And I don't know, like maybe it's just something that kind of took a little while to gain some steam or whatever, but yeah, no, it's funny because it's one that it seemed like it's been around for a while, but it isn't maybe until just recently that started hearing people talk about.
I wonder if it's just because it's on Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime US had it when I watched it last year, and it had it when I watched it like today. So it's been on Amazon Prime US for a while.
I was like, for the first time I watched it, I'm pretty sure I watched it on Shudder. Like this time I watched it on Prime, but I want to say it was on Shudder at least for a little while.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's maybe just that's lent itself to the discoverability, because I watched it because I was just looking at recommended lists of like what horror gems have there been in the decade at the time, and I didn't get to everything I wanted to see. I had a list of about like 25 movies that I wanted to get through. I got through maybe half of them in time for the end of the year. So I'll have to go back to that list at some point and actually make a point of watching the rest, because some of them sounded quite interesting. And what was interesting is there was this one and another movie, which we're not doing this month, but we'll definitely do at some point, another werewolf movie called Howl. And what stuck out to me about there been a couple of werewolf movies is that I've kind of long had the opinion that there was 2 good werewolf movies and every other one kind of sucked. And some were watchable, like Silver Bullet's kind of watchable. Bad Moon, which we did a while ago, had some novelty and a couple of cool things about it, but for the most part, they kind of suck. Like the first thing I think of after the good ones, I'm thinking of like Cursed, and then you're thinking about what do you call it? And Cursed, by the way, we have reviewed. It is a bonus episode which you can access on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for $1 per month to get access to the back catalogue. Cursed is one of the films we did on there, so you can get our thoughts on that. Very I think that was like over an hour, that episode, so fairly in depth. But so I was kind of like, I was like, okay, I've been told there's some good werewolf movies, so I went into late phases with like, okay, impress me then. What you got for me? But anyway, Tim, what's your thoughts? What's your general opinion on late phases?
Well, I mean, just quick before that, I mean, I do agree that like there does seem to be a lot less good werewolf movies. Like I definitely think there's more, than two, but I do understand why you would have that thinking, because like in terms of like all-time classics, like yeah, there really isn't that many. And I mean, I don't know why. I think there are a lot that are like, maybe bad but like cheesy fun though. And then also a lot that are just like straight up bad. But I mean, I do love werewolves though. So like yeah, I am also kind of like, yeah, maybe I don't always believe that, yeah, they're necessarily good, but I am always like on the lookout for, one that might be good. But anyway, late phases. Yeah, I freaking love this. Again, it was when I just offhandedly heard some people recommend, and then yeah, the first time I watched it, I was very pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it. And then watch it again, yeah, it still really held up for me. I think, a lot of it is, the main character who, obviously is like, I mean, he's a jerk, he's an asshole, but you kind of love him. Like he, I think like he's, I don't know, just there's just something that's like very intriguing. I feel like following him, and the like werewolves I think are cool in this, and I do like anything that like like just tries to maybe have like something like different about it, like the like you don't see these type of people like in horror movies. Like usually it's like young sexy co-eds or whatever that like are the main characters, and like having this set in like a retirement community, I think like is a very interesting novel idea. And then like you said, it kind of has like this double meaning where it's like the later phase of your life, and then throwing a monster in that is really cool. But yeah, no, I think it's a very entertaining little bit of a movie.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised as well. There is one thing you said there that I disagree with. I think the werewolves in this look like shit. It's the biggest problem with this movie is how bad the werewolves look. They look like absolute trash. They look like cheap Halloween store costumes. They look bad.
I think there's like a charm to it though.
Sure.
But I mean, maybe it's just because I just like cheesy stuff too much. But
they do look bad,
like
but it's the thing where it doesn't ultimately matter that much, because that's not really what the movie's about. And it does hide them a lot early on as well, because the whole idea is that he's blind.
Yeah.
So to emulate that for us, the audience, we don't necessarily get to see them all that much until quite late in the film. There's a lot I like about this. The main character is very likable. He's very, I mean, he's obviously a bit of a shithead to people, but he's very stubborn. He's very upfront. He's very coarse. But he also calls people out on their bullshit. When he has like these neighbors come over to try and welcome him, and they try and like, do that like, passive aggressive, acting nice, trying to suggest things, and he just basically tells them to piss off like very quickly.
Like I think they say something like where they're like, oh, like like he's like talking about like he was in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, he was in Vietnam. Yeah.
And then like, yeah, I think they're like, oh, well, just thank you so much for your service. And he's just kind of like, oh, didn't you hear we lost that one? Or like something like that. Like, yeah, he's not like one for like, yeah,
small
like,
talk
just,
or niceties. He's no nonsense. Doesn't have time for any of that. And he also has the added thing, and as someone who whose father had MS, like there is definitely something to people who have some sort of ailment, and obviously being blind is very different from having MS, but where there is this determination to show that you don't need help as much as you can. And he has that a lot in this movie, where he's constantly saying, I don't need help with this, I don't need help with that. I've got it from here, He'll be very sarcastic with people who try to offer him help when he doesn't think he needs it. And that's something that he is a big part of his character throughout, is he's determined to prove his own independence. Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's like some like like genuine like frustration, it feels like, between him and his son, who like yeah, just like really wants to help him be like comfortable. Like it kind of seems like he like kind of hates his son at some points, but I think there's like some genuinely like nice moments between them though.
Yeah, the movie is kind of an interesting structure, and I really appreciate about it. And obviously, you have the basic premise of it's a blind man who has to prepare to take on a werewolf on his own. That initially, immediately is already kind of like, oh, that's intriguing, that's tantalizing. Like, how does he do that? But then you also have the retirement commitment thing. But I think the big thing that structurally makes the movie fascinating to me is that it does this thing where there's a werewolf attack in the first 5-10 minutes of the film, right? After we've introduced a character, the first night he's in this community, there's a werewolf attack. And based on a couple of things, he finds a claw. It turns out there's been an attack about a month ago, and then he realizes it's the full moon. And he sort of put this together. And the movie does not dwell on this. It doesn't like have him ponder the existence of werewolves. He just knows. He senses it. And it just goes from there. And I love that the movie then structurally is like, we don't like go through multiple months where like each time something different happens. No. The movie takes place over 1 month from the night this werewolf attack happens, and then it's all about building to the next time, because that's when he's going to fight it. So he's got a month to prepare, and I love movies with like rules and plans and the mechanics of things, and watching him kind of just try and like prepare in small ways. Like you see him like going around his house, like counting his footsteps in each room to sort of try and remember how many steps it is to get to certain doors, and how he can get around the house as quickly as he can given his condition, and all that stuff to me is like super fun. And but then you also have him like interacting with the neighbors, and like the priest, who's kind of a nicer guy who he kind of like bonds with a little bit. Who of course is an actor, recognizably Tom Noonan, who you might know as a horror fan. You might know him mainly as the guy from House of the Devil, but obviously other things too. Larry
Manhunter, big one.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, Manhunter. And of course you have what's his face, Larry Fessenden. That's Fessenden, who pops up in a lot of small roles. He's in this as a gravestone salesman. But he actually, of course, directed that Frankenstein movie we did at the start of 2020. Whose name?
Depraved.
Thank you. My name blank. But he directed that. If he's in here, so there's a few staples of low budget horror filmmaking kind of sprinkled into this, at a personnel level. And it's written by Eric Stoltz, who, if I remember correctly, no, it's not the actor Eric Stoltz. It just happens to have the same name.
Oh, okay.
It's also spelled a little bit differently, I think, but yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, because I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, I didn't really bother doing any research after that. I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Different person, just happens to be a very similar name to the actor.
So now, going off something that you said, I like that. He is very proactive, which is something that I think we've talked about a lot before in other movies. Like, we love when a main character, decides to fight back, and isn't this just kind of helpless person that waits the whole movie and then like stands up in the last 10 minutes. Like, I do like that he's very proactive and smart from the start, and like you said, he's not dwelling on like, could this be? I wonder if do werewolves exist? Let me go to a computer and type in werewolves and get to see
imagine we got the research scene, right? But it was a computer with like the voice assist on for blind people. So it'd be like this: Google has turned up 572,000 search results for werewolf.
I might almost like it. Like, obviously we hate those research scenes. It might almost be worth it just to see the novelty of like how would you do that with all the voices like interlapping and stuff.
Well, that's pretty funny.
But no, like, I love seeing him prepare, and then like and when it starts to get closer, you kind of start seeing the person who is the werewolf is also kind of like preparing, which is cool.
Well, I mean, it really plays on the idea that he's a soldier, and we'll get into this more in spoilers, but there's some of his backstory that thematically comes into kind of like, what his character arc is and what he's going through and what he's kind of trying to prove to himself at the end. And one of the things you said that there's several moments in this film where he's so determined to be independent, but also not be vulnerable. But it doesn't matter how like tough he is, and doesn't matter how planned things are. There are moments where like someone will be standing there, and he'll know they're there because he's really good with his hearing, with his smell. He's really good at catching things like that. There's a moment. In fact, one of the things that comes up right at the start of the movie is, he's got a dog named Shadow, and the son like mentions, "Why does the dog not like me?" And he says, "It's it's your scent. You've got your mother's scent." And it's a really cool double meaning moment because, in the one hand, it tells us that he, pays attention to his, to his sense of smell a bit more than most people probably do, and which makes sense because it's something that apparently does happen when you're blind or you lose another senses. You kind of end up relying on the other ones a little bit more. But also, it leads to the conversation about the fact that his wife passed away some time ago. That he's not really talked about it. It tells us that he's emotionally distant. He hasn't talked to his son about these things.
Yeah.
So it does that, but there's this like determination to prove like what he is. That when he's in moments where clearly it is like a hindrance, there's moments where he is impaired by what this is, by his blindness. It does give it this weird like, in a good way, this double kind of thing where he does feel strong. He does feel like he's going to stick up for himself, but even with all that strength, it is still a bit tense because he has got this vulnerability there.
Yeah.
And I think that's really effective in those moments. But yeah, it is very much a movie. I don't want to say it's like a First Blood type movie, but there is definitely elements of him getting over like what he went through as a vet and choices he's made in his life and why he's willing to fight the way he is here.
Yeah, I like that it doesn't like I don't think it's necessarily like a very political movie, but I like that it doesn't necessarily like glorify like the army or war or anything. Like it's not like hey, I was in the army so I'm a badass. It's like, oh no, it's like he's a tough guy, but
if anything, it's the opposite. When he talks about it, he talks about how he went in all like optimistic about saving lives, but that's not really what his experience was. He's came back just like with all these broken like ideas of who he is and what right and wrong is. Like his experience is not pleasant. It doesn't sound like positive in any way. So I like that.
And I think the actor that plays him, I think does like a really good job too. Really sells it.
Haven't seen him in much. Apparently, I saw him in the 2012 film Premium Rush, which is the bike delivery movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which it's like Michael Shannon's the bad guy. It's a fun little action movie. I don't remember him being there.
Really?
I'm sure I'd recognize him now if I saw it again. But
interesting. Yeah,
it's a fun movie. It's Joseph Gordon-Levitt trying to like get through New York on a bike and running from bad corrupt cops and stuff. It's it's a movie. It's the thing.
No werewolves in it. But...
What is that how we're judging good and bad now? No werewolves, therefore it is not that good. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, if a movie can still be good if it doesn't have werewolves in it, but you're starting off in a deficit. Like you have to kind of work your way up from there.
I'm pretty sure you admitted in the opening of this podcast that most werewolf movies aren't that good, so I'm not sure why this is now a gauge for, oh, that's a point deducted, no werewolves.
I had a change of heart, what can I say?
If anything, it's the opposite. If there is a werewolf, you start off in a deficit, and then you have to prove to me that you're not just some shitty werewolf movie.
Fair, sure.
I'm just saying. But no. No, I mean, honestly, this one, it's kind of like equally a character drama as like a werewolf horror movie, but it blends those things so well together that, and I have to say, watching it a second time now, I think I liked it even more the second time.
Yeah, me too.
Just because knowing what it was going into it and sort of like taking it as like, not because the first time with any movie you go into, you're like, okay, I know kind of roughly what this is supposed to be, but you sort of get a taste for it and you understand as the movie goes what it is, and you realize, oh, it's not this, it's that, or this is what the pacing is going to be, this is what the structure is, this is what the character journey is. Watching it a second time, knowing where it's going, and just sort of appreciating all the details that are building up to where it goes is definitely something where good movies tend to benefit from a second viewing. Typically, if something is lesser the second time, I would say that that's proof that it's not as good a movie. I mean, it's maybe still be good, but that's a fault.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, good movies should stand up under scrutiny, is what I'm saying.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I think we're probably ready to just about go into spoilers. So I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers. At the time of recording, we are recording these episodes way in advance, of course, because Tim's going on paternity leave. But thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are Patreon producers, at least at the end of November 2020. So thank you to you guys. You can, of course, support us over in patreon.com/MailFuzzTV at that tier, but you can go much lower than that, sure. You don't have to give us $20. You can give us $1 per month, and that $1 will get you access to the back catalogue of all the bonus episodes we've done for Patreon, which are on pause just now for a while. Again, the aforementioned paternity leave, but there's a good 20+ episodes that are in there right now you can get access to for that $1, and there'll be more coming starting again sometime in spring. Late spring probably. But you can also, of course, get early access to episodes starting at the $5 tier by a day, and that goes for all the episodes coming out even now. And of course, you get access to stuff from other shows and all sorts of other things. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. It helps keep all the content coming. And yeah, and if you can't do that, don't feel bad. You can obviously hit the like button and subscribe and all those usual things on YouTube, because they all do help us. They all help YouTube recommend us out and help us find more audience members. So please do hit the like button. That's important, even if it seems stupid, because it is stupid, but it's important too, and that's annoying. It's a weird catch-22, but do it. Thank you. I thought you were going to add something, Tim. You looked like you were on the cusp of saying something.
Nah.
Okay. All right. Well, I
was thinking of saying. All right, I'll say a like without a subscribe is like a hometown without the pride.
Oh, jeez. I don't know what to say to that. Okay. Full spoilers for late phases from this point forth. So I kind of love that the movie starts with him like shopping for a gravestone. It's kind of the perfect way to set us in the mood for like thematically what the movie's about. It's like, hey, it's about this guy at the end of his journey, and this is what he's talking about. And we get him, moving into the house. The neighbors coming over and being shocked that a blind man owns a gun, and that doesn't seem very safe. And he's like, no, I'm well trained. I know what I'm doing with this. I know more about this gun than you do about Pop-Tarts. Piss off. It's basically his action.
That's a great line.
Yeah. But it's not like he's a dick to everyone, though, because there is the one neighbor who he meets outside who is very nice to him, and he's nice enough back and says, oh, I look forward to smelling you again. Which is, it sounds, from anyone else it'd be weird, but from a blind person it's kind of a sweet line. And notably, that's the neighbor who dies in the first 10 minutes. So, he's got a reason to care a little bit beyond just that he's in danger, going forward. And yeah, so like he finds like a claw in the wall. His dog, of course, is hurt during it. The dog defends him, right? So the Shadow goes out valiantly defending Ambrose.
Very sad.
Yeah. Did you think it was so? There's two cop characters that always show up for like any of the cop scenes, and one of them's an actor who I've seen in a bunch of stuff, and he's like fine and takes things seriously. But the second cop is like constantly being a dick and like making old age jokes and making jokes about, oh, do you have any leads? He's like, oh well, something with sharp teeth, I think. It's like, he's a total tosspot. It's this unnerving, but. Yeah, we have him like, interact with the neighbors, and he notices these things. He wants to bury his dog, which his son and like daughter-in-law are not happy with, because like oh, we don't want the dog in the car, like all the blood, like we can't just be messing up our car because you want to take the dog home. And like once we get going in the movie, and he gets this flyer to go to church. There's like a shuttle bus that takes all the people from the community to the church, where he meets the priest, and the priest again is very frank with them, and he seems a bit more. He doesn't bullshit. You can tell that Ambrose likes people who don't bullshit him and just sort of have a conversation. And he opens up a little bit to the priest, and a lot of the thematics in the movie kind of come out in these sequences where he talks about being in Vietnam. He talks about how he wanted to save lives, and ultimately that's not what happened. And he tells this really dark story about a child that was used by the enemy. They strapped a grenade to a child and like told the child to run towards them. and like everyone on his, they're like just hesitated and couldn't take the shot. They couldn't like shoot this kid, and he was the one who ultimately had to do it. And this is something that he still sees that kid. He's blind, but every time he shuts his eyes, he still sees that kid's face, running towards him.
Yeah.
And this idea of his past, and there's a lot of talk of like the priest talking about how he still smokes, but he used to be a really bad kid, and he sort of turned his life around, and he's still that you don't kill off that bad part of yourself. It's still there, but he sort of controls it. He sort of relegates it to this like one vice, and he tries to be a good person otherwise. And I think a lot of this movie is about the acceptance of our main character, that he did start to shut people out. He was this miserable person. He wasn't necessarily the greatest husband. He wasn't the greatest father. But he was always a good soldier, and he never really was able to find a way to like sort of become the better version of himself in these other aspects of his life. Yeah, because even the idea of the werewolf, when you think about that thematically, the idea of the good side of yourself and the bad side of yourself, like the whole idea of the werewolf is that the wolf side is this bad side that it takes over, and when we do eventually learn who the werewolf is, which it reveals very starkly. He goes to halfway through the movie, Ambrose goes to buy some bullets, and he goes to this guy and he's like, hey, can you make silver bullets? And he's like, yeah. Which, by the way, this actor is Bobby from Twin Peaks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Who you might
he looked familiar. I couldn't place him, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'll recognize him at that age because in Twin Peaks 2017 he looks like this. But yeah, obviously
that's true, yeah.
he looks a lot different from what he looked like in the original show.
Just going back to that previous scene, I really love Tom Noonan, and part of it is because I just I really dig House of the Devil, but it's so hard for me not to. Actually, two things. One, it's the combination of Tom Noonan, and then also I also really love Silver Bullet, which, spoiler if you haven't seen that movie,
seriously, he's going to spoil who the werewolf is, so I think anyway. Spoiler.
Yeah, so maybe skip like 15 30 seconds if you haven't seen that movie from like 30 years ago. But so the combination of Tom Noonan and my love for Silver Bullet, where the priest is the werewolf in that one, like it's so hard for me not to think that he's like the bad guy in this movie.
Yeah, it's it's very likable in this though. I don't think I ever.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, maybe the first time I watched it, I was like sort of thinking, who could it be? Like who could the who could the werewolf be? But it actually reveals it's like the guy who helps like shuttle everyone, who we see a few times, of course, talking to various characters, talking to Ambrose. I like how it reveals it, because when he goes to get the silver bullets, he just sort of says, hey, has anyone else ever asked for this? Because it's kind of a weird request. And he's like, yeah, now you mention it, someone did ask about a year ago. And he's like, oh, could I ask who? And he's like, I'll have to look it up. And it just cuts to this guy looking in the mirror. And he's got like these marks all over his body, like he's been scratched a bunch of times. And you get the impression, which I really like, that this, and it's something that I don't know if I noticed this as much in the first time, but this implication here that he actually hunted the wolf himself a year ago, and he got scratched in the process. And unlike Ambrose does at the end of the movie, he doesn't like sort of like die to end the spread of it. He essentially let the bad thing take over and let the bad part. So that's what I was talking about the good side and the bad side, and the sort of like keeping control of your bad self, not killing it because you can't kill it, but accepting it and understanding it and keeping it in check so that the good parts can be what you are in the world to everyone. This guy doesn't do that. This guy lets the wolf take over. So that duality of the werewolf and the Jekyll and Hyde of it, if you will. Again, it's a metaphor for just people like dealing with their own demons, their own inner demons, but sure. I think that works really well whenever it's brought up in this movie. And he does start preparing. Because towards the end of the movie, he starts like baiting people like intentionally, so that he's got like backup.
I like that he's basically like creating like his own like little army.
Which I think it's wonderful that he realizes that this blind man's actually good enough that it doesn't matter that he's blind. He's going to kick his ass. So he's like, no shit, I need like 4 other werewolves just to make sure I can fight him. It's kind of amazing.
And it's interesting because he doesn't even like really like. It seems like he doesn't even he doesn't have to like transform into a werewolf. He kind of just like bites them, but like as like a human, but he's like ripping their flesh off. Like it's still pretty
honestly
intense.
where he bites the arm of that really bitchy neighbor, the one who kept complaining about the main character. When he rips off like part of her arm, that's probably the best like gore effect of the whole movie. Is that moment? Sure. It looks really good.
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe second best. There's another one that way you mentioned, but that's a really good moment.
One thing, I don't know if you'll agree about this, but the horror parts of this movie, they feel very like 80s to me. Like there's something about the way that they're filmed that just like, you know, like nothing about the aesthetic feels 80s, but then like when I watch the horror scenes, like early on in the beginning, you know, there's a scene where like the werewolf is like jumping through the window and it's kind of like slow motion. I
get what you're talking about. It does feel, and maybe that's why the charm of the bad suits kind of works, is because the way it's filmed also feels kind of old school. And I think it does help. I think it does make these moments, because you've got like the neighbors on the phone talking to her daughter, so it's a very classic sort of 80s horror movie type scene where, you know, and even Ambrose can hear through the wall that there's something going on because she's like literally next door. I think the scene that inspires the villain to start making this werewolf army is the scene where he tries to go to see Ambrose, thinking he can get away with it because he's blind, but Ambrose just because Ambrose like just recently had a fight with his son, and his son went away. So when he first like hears someone come up, he's like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about this anymore," thinking it's his son. And then when he doesn't get a response, he sort of stands up and smells, and he's kind of looking over, and he's like, I know you're there, you bastard. I can sense it." And he's wearing like a hood, so we don't know who it is. But I think this is the scene where he realizes he's like a formidable foe, and it's like, oh shit, I'm going to have to actually, get help. I'm going to have to try and like stack the deck a little bit here. And just all the simple things of like Ambrose even like dressing up in his military, like his best like military uniform, and he gets bullets for like his various guns, and all made in silver. He sends a message to his, because he has a scene with his son where his son comes over and says that they're going to have to move away because the wife's pregnant and she wants to raise the kid near her family, so they're going to be moving away. And Ambrose is such a cold bastard. He's like, "Oh, I'm happy for you," but really deadpan. So it'll just kind of an argument about the relationship. And it's one of those things where he phones with a message like on the day before the full moon goes down, or before the sun goes down, the full moon is up, where he starts a phone message and we don't get to hear the rest of it, and you're like, okay, this is going to play at the end, like it's going to be really sad when we hear what he said to him, like at the end of the movie. What I like about it though is that the son does show up and sees the tail end of everything, and you get the sense that him hearing this message made him rush here immediately, even though we hadn't heard it yet, which I like that detail. Usually movies will just have them hear it later on, as if they've missed everything, then they get to hear it, and it's like, oh, it's sad, and it still works, but I like that caveat here that he does actually rush down when he hears this, because it sounds like his dad's about to commit suicide. That it sounds really dark out of context. But I do like that his son, even if no one will believe him, the son gets to see some werewolves transform back into humans, just so that he knows his dad wasn't crazy. He knows that his dad died like a hero, like sort of stopping this thing. I think that's important for the heart of the movie.
I think the end scene when like the son comes like rushing in and like sees his dad, it is pretty emotional. Like it does actually it's very effective with what it's trying to do.
Because his whole phone call is just basically, be the man I wasn't. I wasn't the greatest husband, I wasn't the greatest father, but I always loved you, and I hope that you can be better than I am. Don't obsess over the past, look forward. Essentially, let the good side of you be in control. Push the control the bad side, not push it down. Push it down sounds like you're bottling up emotions, which is not healthy, but you know what I mean, like keep it in check.
And I just kind of love that. I think it's very relatable. Like I'm sure a lot of people have had like similar experiences where, every interaction they have before that is like one of frustration and not getting along. But then still at the end of the day, their family, they love each other. That, no matter how frustrated or angry or sometimes you can get, like, it's still at the end of the day, it's like, well, damn, like, I didn't want this to happen. I'm like, it's emotional.
Yeah, it's that sad kind of end of your journey thing where he realizes the only thing he was ever good at was being a soldier, so he's going to do one last good thing as a soldier before he goes. And you know he's going to, because he gets scratched. The first werewolf that attacks him, that he takes down pretty quickly, because because he knows it's the neighbor that he didn't like, because he says, I smell the perfume, bitch, before he kills her. But like, he gets scratched there, so it's like, okay, he's done for. He's already been scratched, so he's going to have to like kill himself or die in the fight, because now it's, and it doesn't feel like it feels like, yeah, this was inevitable, that this was always going to end with him going out fighting. It's kind of like a more serious version of Bubba Hotep in a lot of ways when you think about it. It's like the serious
Actually,
character drama version of Bubba Hotep. But he the actual fight though with the, because he actually takes on the werewolves really, really competently, and it doesn't feel like a cop out either. That he's able to do it fairly quickly in most cases. There's a couple where he has to kind of like, you know, scamper away and like regain his bearings. He has to like aim a little bit. Especially the final werewolf, you know, the main werewolf, who is a bit more coy with them and, you know, leads him around a bit. But some of these moments are really fun. Like, he shoots one from, like, just the window. But there's one that's great where the werewolf's kind of, like, struggling with him. And when he tries to shoot the werewolf, he ends up shooting his own foot. And you can see his toe sticking upwards through his shoe.
Oof. Yeah.
That's a really fun little moment. It's a fun little moment. So, while there's not a lot of horror in the middle, it's all building to it. It does have some really great horror moments at the end, specifically.
It's still... yeah, I mean, I think that's like a big credit to the movie where... there's a ton of werewolf action, but it still manages to be really compelling and entertaining all the way throughout. And then, like... Yeah, and it feels like it brings, like, a lot of stuff together, like... I mean, it's a very obvious Chekhov's gun, but I mean, we see him, you know, loading the gun in the beginning of the movie, and yeah, like, you know, I think maybe, yeah, you know, a little bit, like those old ladies are like, oh, I didn't know a blind man could own a gun, and like, you know, and I guess, like, you know, I probably never really thought about it before, but I was a little surprised too, like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah, what is it safe for like a blind man to own a gun? But then, you know, I love at the end here he shows like, yeah, he is very competent with it, and you know, he's able to, you know, like hear and smell these people out and take them out, which is really nice. And kind of even like, I guess I wasn't really thinking about it too much at the time when I was watching the movie, but I guess this is like, you know, you can see it as also being like very reminiscent to his time in the war, like. You know, he's talking before about the, you know, monologue with the kid with the grenade, you know, strapped to his, you know, to him coming at him. And now you have like, all right, this werewolf is also sending like these innocent people, you know, like, you know, being a werewolf, you know, it's kind of like a grenade. Like, you know, you have this thing that's waiting to go off.
Yeah.
You know, sending him to him. So, you know, it all fits in very nicely.
Yeah, it becomes an actual, you know, a war, for lack of a better word. It becomes a military, like almost tactical piece of combat, and I think that's perfect because it's the whole point is that he's able to do this, and he's able to use his skill set to actually pull this off. And obviously he dies, but you know, he's able to go out the hero that he kind of always wanted to be. And it's still bittersweet. It's sad that he still failed in his life at being all these other things, but he wants to go out doing the one thing that he's good at one last time, and the one bit of good that he can do is like sort of protect other people from this fate. And the fact that his son knows this, and the son sort of, you know, the son's the one, it's a very quiet funeral, it's only him and his wife, but the son, you know, picks up the rifle for the military salute, and you know, the movie ends with him shooting at the moon. It's really delightful. Now, one thing we did gloss over though is that so there's a good scene where the priest comes to talk to Ambrose at his house, and again they bond, they talk about the good side and the bad side, all that. But he goes to the guy who's a werewolf, right? And it turns out that he kind of knows some stuff about this. He doesn't actually believe that he's a werewolf. He thinks he's superstitious, and he's basically he's giving him some like prayers and beads and things to make him like realize, because he knows he's killing dogs, but he doesn't actually believe that he's a werewolf and that he's killing people. He doesn't believe that's him. But the werewolf guy's like, nah, I'm basically throwing the towel. I'm about to kill you probably. The transformation scene, I don't think is mostly any good. It's mostly kind of shit. However, there's one part of it that is actually quite good, and it's the part where like the werewolf teeth are there, and then he essentially like rips open his face. Almost like Superman ripping open his shirt to reveal the S. It's like the hands ripping apart the face to reveal the werewolf head. is actually
very cool.
really cool. That's the one. I mean, the werewolf head looks shit because, as we've established previously, the werewolves look really bad. But the actual effect of the skin ripping apart was really good.
Yeah. So I gotta ask. I want to see where you stand on this, because yeah, like the actual like full body werewolves, they don't look great, but I want to I want to see if you think they look better or worse than what I think is maybe one of the worst werewolf costumes ever, which are the werewolves in Buffy.
I'll be honest, they're kind of on par. They're kind of on par.
But you do agree the werewolves in Buffy don't look great, though, right?
Yeah, I've never argued that. What, you think I'm going to defend them because I like Buffy?
That's what I was trying to see if you were going
no.
disagree with that. Okay.
The werewolf outfits in Buffy look like cheap costumes that they didn't have time to actually do anything with, and these feel similar to me in this, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
But given this is actually a werewolf movie, I'd expect a bit more effort put into the werewolf outfits.
Sure.
Whereas with that, at least it's okay. So we've got a werewolf episode in a show that has 22 episodes a season. I get why they don't have the budget or the time to do anything else.
Yeah, the werewolves in Buffy, they always looked a bit more ape-like to me.
Yes.
Like they kind of look like gorillas or like small Sasquatches or something.
Yeah, they don't look good. I will concur that. But
okay,
these don't look good either. So I'm putting that out there. It's actually a testament that the movie's as good as it is, despite the fact that the werewolves themselves look shit. Like, and this is the thing. Like, there's so much of the movie is the build up to the second full moon, and the mentioning the full moon's coming. It's like tomorrow night, whatever. But it's a testament to the film that it never does get dull. I mean, as long as you're someone who, like, if you're someone who's, how do I say this? It's not insulting. If you're someone who constantly needs things happening because you're maybe more of a, smoke and mirrors movie watcher who needs the flashbangs and the constant action happening.
Lens flare.
This movie's not for you, but if you appreciate actual good character interactions and writing and like this, the build and just the idea of this guy gradually gearing up for this thing, whilst kind of learning about him and learning why we should care about him going out in his last hurrah, taking out this werewolf. Like, this is a war that he can win, in some capacity. Yeah. It's I think it's a really strong movie in that sense, and
totally,
a very pleasant surprise. And it is well directed. To be fair, the werewolves look shit, but I think the direction's pretty solid in most cases. There's a couple of really good sequences, especially once he's sneaking around the house at the end, and the werewolves are sort of like jumping in and coming after him. At least one werewolf gets his head completely like blown apart with a shotgun with silver silver buckshot, which is it's fun.
Yeah, no, it's totally. Yeah, like it really works, and I can definitely see why like maybe this didn't make a huge splash when it came out, but I love that it seems like something that people come around to, and I think like maybe like casual like people that aren't like huge horror fans, maybe they might not love it or ever even know what it is, but it's nice to see that it has like a little bit of some steam in like the horror community. Like it's definitely one I hear people bring up now whenever you talk about like werewolf movies, especially when it's like, all right, well, yeah, other than the big 2 or 3 that everyone knows, like, yeah, here's like another one, a good one to check out.
Yeah, it's nice that there's actually some options now if you want to have a werewolf night. There's a few films that can be thrown into the mix that are worth watching. So and hopefully some of the other stuff we watch this month. Now, admittedly, we are doing a couple of the biggies this month, so there's a couple of safe bets, but hopefully some of the other ones we do are also going to be ones that are worth watching, and we'll get to it. But Late Faces, a very pleasant surprise, a good little character film, and I think just having that focus and making it a character study first of a werewolf movie makes it really stand out, I think, and just the premise not just being, oh, there's a werewolf here and characters have to deal with it. Like, so many movies are just, okay, how do these teenagers or adults react to a werewolf being around? So I appreciate that a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, but ultimately the character's just really good. He's a dick, but he's a kind of a likable dick. He's borderline problematic almost with a couple of his insults, but just in a realistic way where, yeah, he's an older guy, he has a bit of maybe an old-fashioned viewpoint on a couple of things. Not something too serious, but just little things that make it feel a bit more realistic, that he's not just... Yeah. So... But there you go, that's Late Phases. So I guess I'm going to ask the question, Tim, what are you going to rate it?
Yeah. I think I will go relatively high and give it an 8. Because I was kind of jumping back and forth between the 7.5 and that, but you know what, like we kind of mentioned before, how watching this a second time, like I still really dug it, possibly even more than the first time. So yeah, I think it definitely has staying power, and it's certainly not perfect, but again, I think there's a charm to it. I think it's a great little character study. It feels very unique. Again, it's like playing with like themes and characters that you don't really see in like most horror movies, and like especially most like werewolf movies. And I was really happy to watch it again, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. So I'll give it an 8. And I guess I would say, if if people like this, if you like werewolf stories, always good to remember that I have a werewolf comic book out called President Werewolf, that you can buy online or from me. I mean, by the time this this comes out, the second issue will definitely be out. The third issue may even be out at this point. So since this is in the future, but yeah, obviously I'll probably recommend that through all the werewolf movies we do this month. But so I guess 8 out of 10 for Late Phases and 10 out of 10 for President Werewolf.
Yeah, so I don't think Tim is ready for me to have the little advert pop up on the screen advertising his comic book. I don't remember what I gave this when I saw it the first time. I think it was a little bit lower, but not much. But I think I'm going to agree and give it the 8. I think this is exactly the sort of low budget gem that maybe isn't. It's not quite up to the standards of, say, something like I don't know, let me see. And obviously not a werewolf movie, but it's something like, when you discover Let the Right One In, where it's like, oh no, this is like literally one of the best horror movies of all time, and it's in that upper pantheon of, it should be in everyone's top 20 or 50 or whatever it ends up fitting in. This isn't quite that, but this is one of those great low budget gems that slip through the radar, slip through the cracks, and then when you discover it, goes, no, this is a great little movie that I would happily have in my collection, and something that, okay, now when I'm maybe not talking about horror movies of all time, but it's definitely one that's worth watching, and one that definitely belongs in the top 5, top 10 werewolf movies, and I'm sure one day we'll do a werewolf, top 10. But I think if you nail character first and make everything going on be about that character's arc, almost everything else will either fall into place or be forgivable if it doesn't work up or live up to the good qualities. And I think this is an example of that, where the character is so entertaining to watch, his journey is understandable, his arc is engaging and sympathetic and bittersweet and all these things, and most of the other things do work, but the few things that don't, like say the werewolf's looking like shit, it doesn't matter as much, because I care about what's going on. I care about what he's doing and about him having his last hurrah and winning. So and not letting the bad side win. So no, 8 out of 10 for me too. So there you go. If you've made it this far in the review on the YouTubes, put the word shadow in the comments. That is of course the name of his dog, which meets his demise early on, and you can you can do that. So let us know you got that far. You can also, of course, check out Tim's pose for the thumbnail, which he's about to do, unless you're on the audio version, in which case you don't give a shit. And this is just a weird bit at the end of every podcast episode where you hear me react to whatever weird face Tim makes. But here we go. 3, 2, 1, pose. Tim is howling at the moon I would describe that as. Also, both me and Tim tend to let our beards grow in a bit, so we're both looking quite werewolf-esque at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not my forehead, admittedly, but that's, I can't battle science.
I think I was talking about a bunch of werewolf stuff on Twitter. I think when I watched this on Friday, and I was just saying, like, I feel like there aren't any movies like, they show the transformation and they show like all those parts of the person getting hairy, and I feel like there's no werewolf movie where they just like show like the person's ass just like starting to grow hair.
Oh, I did appreciate in this one actually. One little detail in the transformation is that there's a moment where you sort of see all the human teeth come flying out and hitting the floor, which made me think, wait, so every time he transforms back, do all of his human teeth grow in from scratch?
Yeah,
that's
a very painful
It
process.
sounds painful, but it also sounds like an easy way to avoid like ever having to care about the dentist if your teeth are just brand new every month. Like, okay, these are perfect again. Look at me go. So there you go. That's Late Phases. So hopefully you've enjoyed our kind of more low key. There was a couple of ones that I wanted to put in this month, but I was surprised to find that the heavy hitters we haven't done. So yes, this month we'll have the two big heavy hitters which we've never done before. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. One we did do early on, but that was in the dark days before we got good. If we're even good now, which is debatable. But
okay.
But you're getting the heavy hitters. Plus, there was a vote on Patreon, which we did way back in like November, October. Anyway, whoever won that Werewolf vote is also getting done. So hopefully you're looking forward to the rest of Werewolf month. So journey. I mean, it's not as discovering as the last couple months for us because again, it is mostly the heavy hitters that we haven't gotten around to yet. But it is an excuse to do some of those big movies, and hopefully, you guys are along for the ride. So, as we said earlier, like, subscribe, very important. As is Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support us financially over there for as little as $1 per month. Get us on the Twitters at Screams Midnight for updates and wacky shenanigans. Usually coming from Tim because he's, I don't know, talking about Leprechaun in the hood and Brahms in the
waltz.
I was looking for something more ridiculous than hood. I don't know. Brahms in the Amish community. I don't know. But yes, so yeah, go over and do that. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and also beware the full moon. We'll see you next time.